So Afrikaans is the most commonly spoken language in Cape Town, but purists of the language have for years insisted that the dialect spoken by mostly coloured people is at best colloquial and at worst improper. The history of the language shows that appropriation on a massive scale contributed to what is known as so-called pure Afrikaans. Afrikaaps, the internationally acclaimed theatrical take on the Kaaps language, best embodied the Creole history of Afrikaans. Take a look.
As ik say dicey move, I say mark it on. Hello, my brother. Can you do me a favor? When I say dicey move, you say mark it on. Can you do it? Mark it on.
On.
Yeah. Right. Say, if you hear me say dicey move, you say mark it on.
Mark it on.
Just check this. Sing a kans waar hy vinnig spectacular dicey move.
Mark it on.
Slang is amplified the jakketrek wat sy like dicey move.
Maak het aan.
Okay, ek trok betaal swaar kilos en nou, not op die skaal. Dicey move.
Maak het aan.
Maak op plan aan se kant, dis daai laaste kans. Dicey move. Salute man, nou sien jy nou so ons maak dit aan minute.
Certainly a seminal work insofar as Afrikaaps is concerned. So recently a trilingual dictionary was launched by a collective of academics and community stakeholders. The dictionary in Kaaps, English and Afrikaans will be promoted as a powerful democratic resource. In fact, Professor Adam Haupt is the director of UCT's Center for Film and Media Studies and is involved in the project. He joins us now to tell us more. Professor, it's great to have you this morning on the AM report. I think perhaps as a start, before we get into the content of our interview, for the sake of our viewers, tell us what Kaaps is.
Thanks for inviting me, Michelle. Great to be with you. Last time we spoke about Kanye West, so this is a much nicer topic. Kaaps is essentially, the orthodox attitude towards Kaaps is that Kaaps is the colloquial, the vernacular version of Afrikaans. But my colleagues and I contend that actually Kaaps cohered from as early as the 1500s, as soon as indigenous Africans began to interact with visitors and maritime travelers, traders from other parts of the world. That's when the language started to cohere. And one clue for this discussion is the fact that at some point the language was called Kaap Holland, which implies that Kaaps came together with Holland. And this implies that Kaaps cohered before the encounter with Dutch colonizers, Kaap Holland. So that's the clue, right? And so what Afrikaner nationalists did in the 1930s specifically is they appropriated various cultural forms, including Kaaps, in order to consolidate what is now known as Afrikaans. And the version that they taught and consolidated in their dictionaries was the largely Dutch version, and de-emphasized essentially its African roots, its Southeast Asian roots, including Arabic, right? So it's a form, Afrikaans is a form of cultural appropriation of Kaaps. And the mission with the dictionary is to validate Kaaps as a language on its own term, and to trace the multiple origins of Kaaps, not just the Dutch origin.
Yeah. Let's talk about this dictionary a bit more. Incredibly important work, because given what you've just described and the stereotypes that come alongside speaking Afrikaaps, this is hopefully going to change that.
Hopefully it will. It certainly will challenge very, very dominant media perceptions, but also public institutions like schools that continue to tell speakers of Kaaps that the way in which they speak at home and on the street is not respectable. And what's embedded in that is a version of linguistic imperialism, which signals to learners that if you want to intimate that you're competent, that you're intelligent, you have to engage in a particular kind of linguistic performance. You have to speak savor Afrikaans or proper Afrikaans or English. And this challenges that, it's often, linguists often refer to accent as a marker of competence, but it's more than just accent. It's the way in which you write the language, the way in which you speak it, you perform your so-called intelligent competence through your linguistic performances. And what we want to do is diversify that. We're inspired by multilingual scholars, scholars like the late Neville Alexander, who believe that, children need to be taught in their mother tongue, that that it is an important pedagogical strategy to affirm learning in kids' mother tongue, especially when it comes to teaching things like math. We think that largely monolingual or bilingual approaches to learning, to teaching and learning, as the country has adopted, even after 94, it hampers teaching and learning. It actually slows kids down. And so multilingual strategies are essential for democracy, but also on a very practical level, how to ensure that kids stay with you in a classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about the ongoing post-apartheid burden, specifically for coloured speakers of Kaaps. I mean, you know, when you talk about the discrimination against people who speak Afrikaaps, put it plainly, it's associated with a whole range of negative connotations, including gangsterism.
Gangsters, yeah, so dominant media representations of Kaap speakers, they're gangsters, or they're just funny, you know, toothless, brassa, talking nonsense, being laughed at. So you think about all these adverts, TV shows that represent the colored male specifically as the cipher of criminality. Now that form of racism is, you know, it's a variation of black stereotypes across the country and across the world, right? And so the way in which speakers of Kaaps are positioned, it's not unlike speakers of Skamto and other black vernaculars across the country. That's what we all have in common. So the experience of coloredness is a variety. It's a version of the experience of blackness. It's part of that broader black experience. So what people have often done is they've used Kaaps to consolidate coloredness as if it's one whole pure thing on its own, separate from black. And our research on multilingual approaches to education, multilingual media, suggests that, you know, speakers of Kaaps, like speakers of other vernaculars in the country, have a lot in common, especially when it comes to encounters in the classroom, when it comes to, you know, racist and sexist stereotyping in the media. Yeah.
I mean, ideally, Professor Haupt, this work of yours that you've embarked on with a range of other academics and community stakeholders as well, in an ideal world, what you want this work to do is, as you say, is to dispel these racial stereotypes, and further to that, to start empowering young people at schools, at universities. These are the objectives. They feel like they are still quite a long way off.
They are, and of course the project is a long way off. We hope to have a version of this dictionary in 3 years' time. We're going to, at the moment, we're working with a lexicographer. We're training members of Creole, the Hood Project, an NGO that looks at hip-hop education, training them in lexicography. Professor Quentin Williams, who leads this project, is training his own linguistic students in lexicography. So even the sort of practical side of it will take a while. But yes, it will take a while to dispel those stereotypes. But really what we want is for this dictionary to be a resource for students on the ground themselves, for the educators in the classroom, to realize that this is a language that coheres, that has conventions, that has a history, that has idioms and metaphors, that is worth studying, that is worth tapping into. We want people in public institutions to be able to use this as a resource to build bridges of understanding between different linguistic communities, and within that broad category of black, for different kinds of black people to find common ground and to find common understanding. So that's the kind of resource we want. The process is also meant to do that as we discover and engage community members on meanings and words and phrases. That process itself is going to be incredibly productive, we hope.
This form of linguistic activism that you're embarking on, I mean, it's complemented by the work of so many other people in the community as well, insofar as Afrikaaps is concerned. You know, hip-hop artists, their names escape me at the moment, but the people who are members of the movement, they include Black Pearl, Bliksemstraal, Jethro Low, to name just a few people. It's all part of this kind of linguistic activism, and these are sort of the small steps that all of us can take in moving the dial insofar as Afrikaaps is concerned.
Absolutely. I think the artists, especially the hip-hop artists, have done a great deal to validate Kaaps, to validate the sort of multilingual expression of young people. They've also generated an archive a linguistic archive that's going to be fantastic as a resource for us as we capture what is out there. So we're involving a lot of those artists. I was quite I was happy that you played a clip of Jitsvinger. Jitsvinger is actually one of the artists who participated in the theatre show Afrikaaps, which drew on the work of Neville Alexander and educated people about the history of the language. Jitsvinger is the person who coined the phrase Afrikaaps, and his mission was to sort of locate the history of Kaaps within Africa. Let's remember that this is we're African, so not to set Kaaps up as the specifically colored thing that is separate from black, but it is located in Africa as we are Africans, as diverse as the root of the language is. And I thought that was the moment for us. Like, this is brilliant. We absolutely have to write about this. So of course, we wasted no time writing about this academically, but also, continuing our work with the hip-hop artists. So a lot of the work that Professor Williams and I have done has been in collaboration with hip-hop artists like Emil Jansen of Hilverhood Project, like Black Hole, like Jesto, different versions, at least different iterations of a collaboration. This project is the latest iteration of it. The previous iteration of our collaboration was a book called Never Again, which was published in 2019. And it really just drew on the writing, the creativity, the perspectives of hip-hop artists themselves, not just the people, the scholars who write about hip-hop. Yeah. And we even got to co-produce an EP that we attached to the book. And so this just seemed like the next logical step, which Quentin is spearheading, Quentin Williams.
Well, we wish you well for the next steps in your journey. Professor Adam Haupt is with UCT Centre for Film and Media Studies, joining us there via our video link in Cape Town. Great to talk to you, Prof. Thanks very much indeed.